Jiho sidestepped, hooked the prince's ankle with his foot. The council chambers were in chaos. Representatives from every species clustered in groups, their translators working overtime as they debated what they'd just witnessed. Holographic displays showed replays of the fight from every angle. Military analysts were already breaking down each movement, each decision. Jiho sat in a quiet corner of the human delegation's meeting room, an ice pack on his shoulder. The fight had looked easy, but the prince's blade had come close several times. One particular energy burst had singed his jacket. Another strike had been blocked so hard that Jiho's arm still ached from the impact. Commander Hyun entered, looking both proud and worried. "You've started something," he said, sitting down across from Jiho. "Half the council wants to hire human military advisors. The other half wants to ban us from carrying weapons." "Which half is winning?" Jiho asked. "Neither. They're too busy arguing about what just happened." Hyun pulled up a data display. "The footage is spreading across the galactic network faster than anything in recorded history. We're talking billions of views in the first hour. Every military academy, every defense force, every security organization is watching and analyzing." Jiho groaned. "Great. So much for keeping a low profile." "Low profile went out the window when you made a royal prince look like a training dummy," Hyun said, but there was no criticism in his voice. "But you did it right. You embarrassed him without humiliating him. You won without making him lose too much face. Think his empire will accept it? We're about to find out." The door opened. Ambassador Sujin entered, followed by Counselor Mirai, one of the senior human representatives. Both looked tense but excited. "We've received a formal communication from the Velkorian Empire," Sujin announced. "Empress Dalvira wants to meet with us privately within the hour." Jiho started to stand, but Sujin waved him back down. "You especially, Jiho. She specifically requested your presence." "That's either really good or really bad," Jiho muttered. "We're about to find out which," Mirai said. An hour later, they were in a secure meeting room, one of the few places on the station that couldn't be monitored or recorded. The walls were bare metal, the table simple. No decorations, no displays, just a table and chairs. Empress Dalvira entered with minimal escort. She was taller than her son, her crystalline skin showing patterns that spoke of age and wisdom. She wore simple robes rather than formal regalia. When she sat, she gestured for her guards to wait outside. Ambassador Sujin did the same, though Commander Hyun clearly didn't like leaving her alone with an alien empress and just Jiho for protection. Once the door closed, Dalvira looked directly at Jiho. Her eyes were ancient, intelligent, calculating. "That was well done," she said simply. Jiho blinked. "Your Majesty? My son needed that lesson. He's been surrounded by courtiers and yes-men his entire life. No one has ever truly challenged him. You did, and you did it without killing him, which shows more skill than simply defeating him would have." She turned to Sujin. "Your people are interesting, Ambassador. We've been watching humans since you made first contact with the Council 3 years ago. We've studied your history, your wars, your methods. We thought we understood you, and now?" Sujin asked carefully. "Now I realize we understood the facts but not the truth." Dalvira gestured to a holographic display that appeared above the table. It showed star maps, trade routes, military positions. "The galaxy you've entered is not as peaceful as it appears. Most species joined the Council during eras of cooperation and exploration. They developed their militaries as afterthoughts. Ceremonial forces meant more for tradition than actual combat." Jiho leaned forward, interested despite himself. This was starting to sound familiar. "But there are threats," Dalvira continued. "Forces that don't care about council laws or diplomatic niceties. Pirates in the outer reaches. Rogue AI that went dark during the Silicon Purge. And now?" She paused. "Now we face something worse." The display changed, showing a section of space at the edge of known territory. Planets marked in red, ship signatures that didn't match any known species. "The Skaric Swarm," Dalvira said quietly. "They appeared 6 months ago at our border worlds. We've lost 3 planets, 2 million casualties, and we can't stop them." Sujin's face went pale. 2 million? Why hasn't the Council intervened?" "Because the Council doesn't know," Dalvira said. "We've kept it quiet. The Velkorian Empire has always been strong, always been proud. Admitting we can't handle this threat would show weakness. Other empires would take advantage. But you're telling us," Jiho said. "Yes. Because today I watched a single human defeat my best warrior using methods we don't understand. Methods that worked precisely because they're uncivilized, unrefined, and brutally effective. She looked at him with something like respect. You fight like you're always outnumbered and outgunned. Like survival is never guaranteed. That's because it isn't, Jiho said simply. Humans have been fighting against bad odds since we lived in caves. We got good at it, Dalvira nodded slowly. The Scarricks don't fight like civilized species. They don't have honor duels or formal tactics. They swarm, they overwhelm, they adapt. Every strategy we use, they counter. Every weapon we deploy, they neutralize. They fight like... She searched for words. Like they want to survive, Jiho finished. Like it's not a game. Exactly. Dalvira stood, pacing. My military advisors are trained in traditional warfare. Formation fighting, siege tactics, fleet maneuvers. All of it useless against an enemy that doesn't follow the same rules. Ambassador Sujin saw where this was going. You want human military assistance? I want more than that, Dalvira said. I want to hire your best combat instructors. I want to learn how humans approach warfare, not the technology. We have better ships and weapons than you do. But the mindset, the willingness to do whatever is necessary to win. Jiho exchanged glances with Sujin. This was way above his pay grade, but the ambassador was thinking, calculating the political implications. This would be humanity's first major military contract with another species. Sujin said carefully. The council would see it as us taking sides. The council doesn't need to know, Dalvira replied. Not yet. Not until we've proven the concept works. Officially, we're hiring human security consultants to train our palace guard. Unofficially, you want us to teach your military how to fight dirty, Jiho said. Dalvira smiled. And it wasn't entirely pleasant. I prefer to think of it as teaching them to fight effectively. But yes, essentially. Sujin was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. I'll need to consult with Earth Command, but I think we can work something out. What exactly are you offering in return? Technology sharing, preferred trade status, cultural exchange programs, and something you need desperately, legitimacy. Dalvira pulled up another display. The council barely tolerates humanity. You're seen as newcomers, barbarians. But if the Velkorian Empire publicly endorses Earth as an ally, others will follow. Within a decade, you could be a major power instead of a curiosity. It was a good offer. Too good. Jiho spoke up. What's the catch? Dalvira looked at him with approval. Clever. Yes, there's a catch. If this becomes public before we're ready, if other empires learn we needed human help, we'll deny everything. You'll be labeled as mercenaries, war profiteers. Earth's reputation would be destroyed. So we take all the risk, Jiho said. You take the risk of failure. We take the risk of exposure. Both of us have much to lose. Dalvira sat back down. But I watched you today, Jiho. You didn't just fight to win. You fought to teach. You gave my son a chance to learn rather than simply crushing him. That tells me you understand the difference between victory and wisdom. She looked at both of them. I'm not asking for warriors. I have plenty of those. I'm asking for teachers. Can you do that? Ambassador Sujin looked at Jiho. Well, can we? Jiho thought about it. Teaching aliens how to fight like humans meant sharing knowledge that had been earned in blood. The resource wars, the colony conflicts, Titan, the Belt. Every lesson paid for with lives, but it also meant proving that humanity had something valuable to offer the galaxy. Something besides primitive technology and aggressive expansion. Yeah, he said finally. We can do that. But on one condition. Which is? Dalvira asked. Your son, the prince. He said he wanted to learn. I meant what I said. If we're teaching your military, he learns too. No special treatment, no royal privileges. He trains like everyone else. Dalvira considered this. Then she laughed, a sound like crystal chimes. Done. It will be good for him. He spent too long thinking his title makes him invincible. They spent the next hour working out details. Numbers of instructors needed, locations for training, compensation, secrecy protocols. By the time they finished, Jiho's head was spinning with logistics. As they prepared to leave, Dalvira stopped Jiho one more time. That knife of yours, the one that's killed 47 times. May I see it? Jiho hesitated, then drew the blade and handed it to her. Handle first. Dalvira examined it carefully, turning it over in her hands. Simple, she said. Basic materials, no energy field, no advanced technology. Just metal shaped to cut. That's all it needs to be, Jiho said. My son's sword is a masterpiece, Dalvira continued, worth more than a small moon, forged with techniques passed down through centuries. And the grand arena was built into the outer ring of the council station, with transparent walls that showed the infinite darkness of space beyond. Seats rose in tiers, filled with representatives from 200 different species. Holographic cameras floated through the air, broadcasting the event to billions across the galaxy. Jiho stood in the preparation chamber, wearing simple combat fatigues. No armor, no protective gear, just black clothing and his knife. Commander Hyun had tried to convince him to wear at least a vest, but Jiho had refused. Armor would slow him down, and speed was the only advantage he had. Daeho, the military observer, was checking the recording equipment. Every move, every technique would be analyzed by human military academies for years to come. This wasn't just a fight. It was a lesson for anyone who might face humans in the future. Remember, Daeho said quietly, we need this recorded perfectly. Win or lose, other species need to see how humans approach combat. I remember, Jiho replied. He was stretching, keeping his muscles warm and loose. The movements were practiced, economical. Nothing wasted. On the other side of the arena, he knew Prince Velthar was preparing too. Probably surrounded by advisors, priests, weapons masters, going through ancient rituals meant to focus the mind and honor the ancestors. The prince would emerge in full ceremonial battle dress, his legendary sword gleaming. Jiho had a knife and dirty boots. The door opened. Ambassador Sujin entered, her face calm but her eyes worried. You can still walk away from this, she said. I can claim diplomatic oversight, say I didn't authorize the duel, and look weak in front of the entire council? Jiho shook his head. No, this is happening. Then don't kill him, Sujin said urgently. Please, Jiho, I know what you're capable of. I've read your file. But if that prince dies, we'll have war with an empire that has 300 star systems. I know, Jiho said. I won't kill him, but I need to beat him badly enough that no one else wants to try. A chime sounded. The arena was ready. Jiho walked out into the light. The crowd's noise hit him like a physical force. Thousands of voices in hundreds of languages all talking at once. He walked to the center of the arena, his boots clicking on the polished floor. The ceiling above him was clear, showing stars and the curve of a nearby planet. Across from him, a gate opened. Prince Velthar emerged. The prince wore armor that seemed to be made of living crystal, flowing over his body like water. It caught the light and split it into rainbows. His sword was already drawn, the blade shimmering with contained energy. He wore a helmet shaped like the head of some ancient predator, with a crest that rose 3 feet above his head. He looked magnificent, terrifying, like a god of war from ancient mythology. Jiho looked like a janitor who'd wandered into the wrong room. The crowd grew quiet as the arbitrator appeared. Floating above the center of the arena, its voice resonated through the space. By the laws of the Galactic Council, this ritual combat will proceed. The challenged has chosen his weapon. The challenger has chosen his. Combat will continue until one participant yields, is unable to continue, or death occurs. The last word hung in the air like a threat. Combatants, take your positions. Prince Velthar moved into a formal stance, his sword held in a high guard. His feet were perfectly positioned, his weight distributed exactly according to 10,000 years of refined technique. He began to speak in his own language, and the translators picked it up. I call upon the spirits of my ancestors. I fight with the strength of the royal bloodline. I wield the sword of the Dawn Star, forged in... Jiho interrupted him. Are we fighting or giving speeches? The crowd gasped. Even the arbitrator seemed taken aback. You didn't interrupt a Velkorian combat prayer. It was deeply disrespectful. The prince's eyes blazed with anger. You have no honor. Probably not, Jiho agreed. Can we start now? The arbitrator hesitated, then announced, Begin. Prince Velthar moved immediately, and Jiho understood why this species had conquered so many worlds. The prince was fast, faster than human reflexes should be able to track. His sword traced patterns in the air, each movement flowing into the next. Energy crackled along the blade, leaving trails of light. It was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, and completely impractical. Jiho didn't try to match the prince's acrobatics. He simply wasn't where the attacks landed. Each time the glowing sword swept through the space where he'd been, Jiho had already moved. Not fancy dodges or rolls, just efficient steps, minimal movement, maximum effect. The prince spun, his blade cutting a horizontal arc that should have been impossible to avoid. Jiho ducked under it, the energy so close he felt heat on his scalp. While the prince was completing his spin, Jiho could have struck. The prince's side was exposed, his guard open. It would have been easy. Instead, Jiho stepped back and waited. The prince attacked again, this time a series of overhead strikes combined with kicks and sweeps. Each move was precise, perfectly executed. Jiho could see the training, the discipline. This was a master at work, but mastery of ceremony wasn't the same as mastery of combat. Jiho blocked the first strike with his knife, angling it so the energy blade slid off rather than meeting it directly. The prince's sword was stronger, but force didn't matter if you didn't meet it head-on. He sidestepped the kick, caught the sweep with a simple hop, and was back out of range before the prince could recover. "Stand still," the prince shouted, frustrated. "Why?" Jiho asked, genuinely curious. The crowd was murmuring now. This wasn't how duels were supposed to go. The human should be desperately defending, being driven back, making last stands. Instead, he looked almost bored. Prince Velthar changed tactics. He began to use his armor's capabilities, releasing bursts of energy that exploded outward in waves. Jiho felt the first one coming. A change in air pressure, a smell like ozone, and dropped flat. The wave passed over him harmlessly. The second burst came faster. Jiho rolled to the side, came up running. The third and fourth came almost simultaneously. Jiho went low, then high, reading the pattern, understanding the rhythm. "You only fight at 3 distances," Jiho said, loud enough for the prince to hear. "Long range with energy, medium with the blade, close with your armor's systems." "It's predictable. Predictable?" The prince's voice was outraged. "This is the royal combat form, perfected over millennia." "Yeah," Jiho said. "That's the problem. It's perfect for dueling other people who use the same form, but I don't." He moved forward then. Really moved. And the prince suddenly understood the difference between practiced speed and combat speed. Jiho's knife came in low, angled upward. The prince blocked, but Jiho had already changed direction. The knife came from the side. The prince's armor deflected it, but he had to shift his weight, break his stance. Jiho pressed the advantage. 3 strikes in 2 seconds. None of them full power, all of them testing. The prince blocked 2. His armor absorbed the third. But he was backing up now, his perfect form disrupted. "Your sword," Jiho said, breathing easily, "is a beautiful weapon, but it's made for killing people in armor at medium range. Look at the length, it's perfect for keeping distance. The energy field, ideal for cutting through shields and protection. But against someone without armor, someone fast, someone who fights close?" He demonstrated by slipping inside the prince's guard again. His knife moved in a blur, not wild slashing, but controlled, purposeful. Each strike targeted a joint in the armor, a gap, a weak point. The prince blocked most of them, but he was working twice as hard to do it. "You've trained your whole life," Jiho continued, almost conversationally, "to fight opponents who follow the same rules you do. Honor guards, ceremonial champions, other royalty." The prince swung his sword in a desperate arc. Jiho caught the blade with his knife, twisted, and the prince's grip slipped. The legendary sword of the Dawn Star flew through the air and clattered to the ground 15 feet away. The arena went absolutely silent. Prince Velthar stood there, stunned. His hands were empty. In Velkorian culture, being disarmed was a humiliation worse than defeat. Jiho could have ended it then. The prince was defenseless, but instead he stepped back and gestured to the sword. "Pick it up," he said. The prince stared at him. "What?" "Your sword. Pick it up, we're not done." You're giving me a second chance?" "I'm giving you a lesson," Jiho corrected. "Pick up your sword, and this time forget about perfect form. Just try to hit me." The prince retrieved his sword, his mind reeling. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The human should be dead or begging for mercy. Instead, he was offering advice like a teacher to a student. The prince attacked again, and this time there was desperation in it. No formal stances, no ancestral techniques. Just raw aggression and the desire to land a single blow. It was better. Not good enough, but better. Jiho defended more actively now, his knife a blur of dark metal against the prince's glowing blade. The sound of their weapons meeting rang through the arena like bells. Energy sparked where the blades touched. The crowd was on their feet, watching something they'd never seen before, A human fighting an elite alien warrior to a standstill. More than a standstill. Jiho was in control, had been from the beginning. Every exchange ended with the prince breathing harder, moving slower. Jiho's expression never changed. Calm, focused, professional. Finally, the prince made a mistake. He overextended on a thrust, putting too much weight forward. The space station hung in the darkness like a massive wheel of metal and light. Ships from 100 different worlds docked at its ports, bringing diplomats and leaders to the Galactic Council. Among them was a small human vessel, plain and unremarkable compared to the grand warships and luxury cruisers that surrounded it. Jiho stood near the airlock, checking his equipment one final time. His uniform was simple, black and gray, no medals or decorations. At his hip was a combat knife in a worn leather sheath. He had carried that knife for 15 years, through more fights than he cared to remember. Ambassador Sujin walked past him, smoothing down her formal robes. "Try to smile, Jiho," she said quietly. "We're here to make friends, not enemies." Jiho nodded but didn't smile. He wasn't here to make friends. He was here to keep Sujin alive. Commander Hyun, leading the security team, gave him a brief look. They understood each other without words. Both had served in the Titan campaign. Both knew what real fighting looked like. The airlock opened and they stepped into the grand hall of the council station. The sight was overwhelming. Alien beings of every shape and size filled the massive chamber. Some floated, some walked on multiple legs, some seemed to shift between states of matter. Holographic displays showed distant worlds and stellar maps. The air hummed with translation devices converting thousands of languages simultaneously. At the center of the hall stood the Velkorian delegation. They were impossible to miss. Tall and elegant, with crystalline skin that reflected light in rainbow patterns, they wore armor that seemed more ceremonial than practical. Gold and silver decorated every surface. Energy weapons hung at their sides, pulsing with soft blue light. At their head stood Prince Velthar, wearing a crown of living metal that shifted and moved like liquid. The prince saw the human delegation, and his expression changed. His eyes narrowed. He said something to his attendants, and they laughed. The sound carried across the hall, sharp and mocking. Ambassador Sujin approached the designated greeting area, her face calm and professional. Jiho followed 3 steps behind, his eyes scanning the crowd. Commander Hyun and the other guards formed a loose perimeter. Prince Velthar stepped forward to meet them. According to protocol, he should have bowed slightly, a sign of respect between equals. Instead, he looked down at Sujin with obvious contempt. "So these are the humans," he said, his voice amplified by his translator. "The prey species that think they belong among the stars." Sujin's smile didn't waver. "Prince Velthar, it is an honor to meet you. I bring greetings from Earth and her colonies." "Greetings," the prince repeated, as if tasting something bitter. "Tell me, Ambassador, do your people still kill each other over scraps of territory? Or have you evolved beyond your savage nature?" Murmurs rippled through the watching aliens. Some seemed shocked by the rudeness. Others watched with interest, waiting to see how the humans would respond. Sujin's voice remained steady. "We have learned from our past, as all civilizations must. We hope to share that wisdom with the Council." Prince Velthar laughed again. It was not a pleasant sound. "Wisdom? From a species barely 2 centuries into space travel. My people were crossing galaxies when your ancestors were crawling in mud." Jiho felt his jaw tighten, but he didn't move. This was Sujin's game, not his. She was trained for this: insults, provocations, diplomatic traps. His job was to watch for physical threats, but then the prince made a mistake. He stepped closer to Sujin, invading her personal space in a clear act of intimidation. Jiho moved immediately, placing himself between them. He didn't touch anyone. He didn't speak. He simply stood there perfectly still, his eyes locked on the prince. The hall went quiet. Prince Velthar stared at Jiho with surprise that quickly turned to rage. In Velkorian culture, such a movement was a challenge. A statement that the bodyguard considered the prince a threat to be neutralized. "You dare?" the prince whispered, his voice dangerous. "You dare to stand before royalty without permission?" Jiho said nothing. His face showed no emotion. He had faced worse things than an angry prince. Much worse. The prince's hand went to his sword, an ornate weapon that hung at his side. The blade was legendary, forged in the heart of a dying star, passed down through 300 generations of Velkorian rulers. He drew it slowly and the metal sang as it left the scabbard. Energy crackled along its edge, bright enough to cast shadows across the floor. "In my culture," the prince said loudly, making sure everyone could hear, "such disrespect demands satisfaction. I challenge this human to ritual combat. Let us see if your species can fight as well as it can insult." The hall erupted in conversation. Aliens spoke in dozens of languages, their translators creating a wall of sound. Ambassador Sujin stepped forward, trying to defuse the situation, but the prince raised his free hand. "The challenge is made. By council law, it cannot be withdrawn without dishonor to both our peoples." An elderly alien, the council arbitrator, floated forward. Its body was mostly gas held together by an energy field. When it spoke, the voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Prince Velthar speaks truth. A formal challenge has been issued and witnessed. Does the human accept or does he yield?" All eyes turned to Jiho. He looked at the prince's sword, that magnificent weapon worth more than a starship. He looked at the prince himself, standing in his ceremonial armor, trained since birth in the ancient fighting arts of his people. Then Jiho yawned. It wasn't forced or exaggerated. He was genuinely tired from the long flight. He covered his mouth politely and then spoke for the first time. "I accept." His voice was flat, bored even. He patted the knife at his hip almost absently. "But I should warn you," Jiho added, his tone as casual as if discussing the weather. "This knife has killed 47 opponents in real combat. Not ritual duels. Not practice fights. Real combat, where people actually die." He looked directly at the prince, and for just a moment something flickered in his eyes. Something cold and ancient. The look of a man who had seen death up close and survived. "How many has yours killed, Your Highness?" The silence that followed was absolute. Prince Velthar's face flushed with anger, his crystalline skin shifting to deep purple. But beneath the rage there was something else, something he would never admit. Uncertainty. The council arbitrator's voice filled the hall again. "The duel will commence at dawn cycle in the grand arena. Both parties will have time to prepare. Let it be witnessed and recorded." As the crowd began to disperse, Commander Hyun approached Jiho quietly. "That was either very brave or very stupid." Jiho shrugged. "Probably both." Ambassador Sujin looked worried but said nothing. She knew Jiho's record. She knew what he had survived. But she also knew that this wasn't a battlefield. This was politics, and politics had different rules. Jiho walked back toward their quarters, his hand resting on his knife. The blade inside had indeed killed 47 times. Pirates, terrorists, rogue military units, hostile aliens who didn't believe in talking first. Each death had been necessary. Each one had been quick. He wondered if number 48 would be a prince. He hoped not. Dead princes tended to start wars, and he was tired of wars. But if the prince insisted on learning the difference between ceremony and survival, Jiho would teach him. It was, after all, what humans did best. The transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Jiho got his first look at a Velkorian border world under attack. What he saw made his stomach tighten. The planet below was burning. Not everywhere, but in patches that showed up as red scars against the blue-green surface. In orbit, debris from destroyed ships formed rings of wreckage. And everywhere, moving in patterns that looked almost organic, were the Skariks. Lieutenant Jiwoo, commanding the human marine platoon, whistled low. "That's a lot of hostiles." "Counts over 10,000 ships in this system alone," said Kyung-ho, the combat engineer, reading his scanner. "Small craft, mostly. They're moving in swarm patterns." Admiral Tajin's voice came over the comm from the lead human warship. "All teams, this is command. We're here as advisors and observers only. The Velkorian fleet will engage first. We watch, we learn, we report. Understood?" A chorus of acknowledgements came back. Jiho stayed quiet, watching the tactical display. The Velkorian fleet was impressive. Massive battleships with enough firepower to crack planets. They moved into formation with perfect precision, their ships arranged in classical battle arrays that looked like they'd come straight from ancient military textbooks. It was going to be a massacre, and not in the Velkorians' favor. "They're doing it wrong," Prince Velthar said quietly. He was standing beside Jiho, wearing human-style combat fatigues instead of his royal armor. 3 weeks of training with the human marines had changed him. He stood differently now, moved differently. "Less like a prince, more like a soldier, you see it too?" Jiho asked. Those formations assume the enemy will engage in a similar formation. But the Scarricks don't have formations. They have flow. The prince pointed at the display. Watch. They're not trying to match our battleships. They're going for the support vessels. He was right. The Scarrick swarm split into smaller groups, each flowing around the big warships like water around rocks. They targeted supply ships, troop transports, communication relays, all the unglamorous but essential vessels that kept a fleet functioning. The Velkorian admiral tried to adapt, breaking formation to protect the support ships. That's when the Scarrick struck at the now isolated battleships. They're not fighting, Jiho said, understanding. They're hunting. The battle lasted 4 hours. By the end, the Velkorian fleet had destroyed thousands of Scarrick's vessels, but they'd lost their entire logistics train and 3 capital ships. The surviving warships retreated in disorder, leaving the planet below to its fate. In the aftermath, Admiral Tajin called a meeting aboard the human flagship. The conference room was packed. Human officers, Velkorian commanders, and Prince Velthar as his mother's personal representative, a Velkorian admiral, his crystalline skin dark with shame, stood to give his report. We destroyed 6,300 enemy vessels at a cost of 42 ships and 12,000 personnel. By any traditional metric, we won. And yet the planet below is still under attack, Admiral Tajin said quietly. And your fleet is running low on ammunition, fuel, and supplies. The Velkorian admiral's expression hardened. Are you criticizing our tactics, human? Yes, Tajin said bluntly. Your tactics are beautiful, traditional, and completely wrong for this enemy. The room erupted in angry Velkorian voices. Tajin waited for them to quiet down, then pulled up footage from the battle. You treat war like a formal engagement between equal powers. Formations honor measured responses. The Scarricks treat war like a swarm of insects attacking a larger animal. They don't care about honor or formations. They care about consuming everything in their path. He switched the footage to show human Marines fighting during the Titan campaign. This is how humans learn to fight. We were always outnumbered, usually outgunned, and frequently on the defensive. We couldn't afford to be pretty. We had to be effective, Jiho stood up. Permission to speak, Admiral. Granted. Jiho addressed the Velkorian commanders. You're fighting the wrong war. You're trying to defeat the Scarricks in battle. But battles are about honor and victory. Wars are about survival and resources. The Scarricks don't want to beat you in a fair fight. They want to eat your planets and move on. He pulled up a tactical map. Look at their attack pattern. They don't care about your battleships. Those will run out of fuel and ammunition eventually. They care about your supply lines, your infrastructure, your ability to sustain a defense. They're not trying to destroy your fleet. They're trying to starve it. Prince Velthar spoke up. Then what do you suggest? Stop trying to defend everything, Jiho said. You can't protect every planet, every ship, every resource. The Scarricks can replace losses faster than you can, so we make them fight on our terms, not theirs. Which means what exactly? The Velkorian admiral demanded. Lieutenant Jiwoo answered. Asymmetric warfare. Hit and run. Ambush tactics. Make every victory cost them more than they gain. Force them to slow down, to consolidate. Then hit their supply lines the same way they're hitting yours. That's not how civilized species fight, another Velkorian officer protested. No, Jiho agreed. It's how species that want to survive fight. There's a difference, the argument went on for another hour. Some Velkorian commanders were insulted by the suggestion they abandon traditional tactics. Others, having seen the results of those tactics, were more willing to listen. Finally, Prince Velthar stood. As the Empress's representative, his word carried weight. I propose a test. Give the humans command of one border world defense. Let them implement their tactics. If they fail, we return to traditional methods. If they succeed, we consider broader changes. The Velkorian commanders didn't like it, but they agreed. They were losing the war slowly. A quick defeat might at least give them answers. 2 days later, Jiho stood on the surface of Velkoria 7, a mining world that was next in the Scarrick's path. He'd been given command of 3,000 Velkorian troops and 500 human marines. Against a swarm that numbered in the millions, Kyungho was setting charges on the main spaceport. You know this is crazy, right? We're destroying our own infrastructure. Not our infrastructure, Jiho corrected. Theirs? The Scarricks use whatever they capture, so we make sure there's nothing useful to capture. Lieutenant Jiwoo was coordinating with Velkorian officers, teaching them human small unit tactics. Most of the aliens were struggling with the concept of fighting dirty. They'd been trained to stand in formations, to face the enemy directly. The idea of hiding, ambushing, and retreating went against everything they'd learned. Prince Velthar was working with a squad of Velkorian soldiers, showing them techniques Jiho had taught him. "Forget about honor," he was saying. "Forget about facing the enemy as equals. The Skarriks aren't equals. They're a swarm. You don't challenge a swarm to honorable combat. You exterminate it." The word sounded strange coming from a prince who'd been raised on ceremonial warfare, but he'd learned fast. The Skarriks arrived 3 days later. Their ships descended like a plague, blotting out the sun. Millions of small craft, each carrying dozens of the insect-like creatures. The Velkorian fleet in orbit engaged them using human tactics. No formations, just hit-and-run strikes, then immediate retreat. They weren't trying to win. They were trying to make the Skarriks commit forces to the planet's surface. It worked. The Skarrik swarm descended, confident of an easy victory. They found deserted cities. The spaceport was rubble. The mines were collapsed. Everything of value had been destroyed or booby-trapped. The Skarriks advanced cautiously at first, then faster as they found no resistance. That's when Jiho's forces struck. Small teams, no more than 10 soldiers each, hidden in prepared positions. They attacked from ambush, inflicted casualties, then disappeared before the Skarriks could respond. The aliens found humans and Velkorians fighting side by side, using weapons and tactics they'd never encountered before. Explosives hidden in buildings. Sniper teams targeting command organisms, chemical weapons in the water supply. Everything the Skarriks took they paid for in blood and confusion. The swarm tried to adapt, spreading out to search for hidden enemies. That just made them easier to pick off. They tried consolidating their forces. That made them targets for orbital strikes from the hit-and-run Velkorian fleet. For 2 weeks, the battle raged. The Skarriks held the planet's surface, but they couldn't use it. Every resource was poisoned or destroyed. Every position was trapped. Every advance was ambushed. Finally, they withdrew. The cost of holding a worthless rock was too high. When the Velkorian fleet returned to orbit, they found their planet intact but ruined. And they found Jiho's forces, battered and exhausted but alive. The casualty count told the story. Human and Velkorian losses. 473 dead, 800 wounded. Skarriks losses, estimated at over 50,000. More importantly, the swarm had been forced to retreat for the first time. Admiral Tajin arrived to assess the results. He walked through the ruined cities with Jiho, looking at the destruction. "You turned an entire planet into a trap," Tajin said. "It was the only way to win with the forces we had," Jiho replied. "Conventional defense would have been suicide, so we made them fight on our terms." Prince Velthar joined them, his royal armor replaced with battle-scarred combat gear. He looked different now, harder, older, more real. Jiho sat on the edge of his bunk, the knife laid across his knees. The metal was dark, almost black, with a slight blue tint that came from materials found only in the deepest mines of Titan. The blade was 12 inches long, single-edged with a grip wrapped in synthetic fiber that had molded to his hand over years of use. The door chimed. "Come in," he said without looking up. Youngmi entered carrying a data tablet and a concerned expression. She was the team's tactical advisor, a former military historian who had studied every major conflict humanity had fought since leaving Earth. She pulled up a chair and sat across from him. "I've been researching Velkorian combat styles," she said, activating her tablet. Holographic images appeared in the air between them. Diagrams of sword techniques, movement patterns, energy manipulation. They've been refining their martial arts for over 10,000 years. The prince has trained since childhood. Their fighting style is based on ceremony, Jiho interrupted quietly. "I know," Youngmi paused. "You watched the recordings?" "Didn't need to." He ran his thumb along the blade, careful not to touch the edge. "I saw how he moved, how he stood. Perfect balance, perfect form. Like a dance, that's exactly what it is," Youngmi said. "Their duels are ritualized. They have rules, patterns, expected responses. It's about honor and tradition." Jiho finally looked up at her. "We don't fight like that." "No," she agreed softly. "We don't." The door chimed again. This time it was Dr. Isul, the medical officer. She carried a scanner and a medical kit. Jiho sighed but stood up, letting her examine him. She ran the scanner over his body, and old injuries lit up on her screen like a map of violence. 3 cracked ribs that healed badly, she muttered. Scar tissue in your left shoulder. Nerve damage in your right hand. Jiho, you're held together by sheer stubbornness. Good thing stubbornness doesn't show up on medical scans, he replied. Dr. Isul wasn't amused. She pointed to a long scar across his abdomen. This one almost killed you. Titan, right? Jiho nodded. The Titan campaign. Everyone in the human military knew about it, but few had actually been there. It had been humanity's first major conflict after reaching the outer solar system. The colony on Saturn's moon had declared independence, then fallen under the control of a rogue military faction. The fighting had lasted 8 months in low gravity, thin atmosphere, and temperatures that could freeze flesh in seconds. Young Mai pulled up more files on her tablet. The Council doesn't understand human military history, she said. They think we're newcomers who got lucky. They don't know about the resource wars, the colony conflicts, the Mars rebellion. They don't know that we've been fighting continuously for the entire time we've been in space. Most species reach space during peaceful periods, Dr. Isol added, finishing her scan. They develop technology, explore, make contact with others. War comes later, if at all. We were different, Jiho said, picking up his knife again. We reached space because we ran out of room to fight on Earth. We brought our wars with us. Young Mi nodded grimly. Every human colony has been established during or immediately after a conflict. Mars was a military base before it was a settlement. The belt stations were built to control resources we were fighting over. Titan was a prison colony that became a rebellion. She pulled up an image of the knife, which brings us to this. Do you want to tell me about it, or should I just read the reports? Jiho was quiet for a moment. Then he began to speak, his voice distant, remembering. I was 23 when they sent me to Titan, part of the 3rd Marine Division. Our job was to retake the main colony from the separatist forces. Nobody told us they'd turned the whole place into a fortress. He turned the knife over in his hands. Standard issue blades couldn't handle the cold. They'd snap if you hit something hard. So some of us found a Titan mining facility and took material from their drills. Stuff designed to cut through ice and rock at -200 degrees. A local armorer forged them for us, he continued. 7 knives total. I'm the only one who still has mine. Dr. Isul's expression softened. The others? Dead, all 6 of them. Good Marines. Better friends. The room fell silent. Young Mi closed her files. She had read the reports, knew the casualty rates. The Titan campaign had been won, but at terrible cost. After Titan came the belt, Jiho continued, as if he couldn't stop now that he'd started. Pirates raiding supply ships. They didn't take prisoners. Neither did we. Then there was the incident at Europa Station. Terrorists trying to destroy the ice mining operation. 37 hostages. We got them out, but it wasn't clean. He counted on his fingers. Titan, 19 kills. The belt, 12 more. Europa, 6. Various other operations, 10. 47 total. All necessary, Young Mi said firmly. All in defense of innocent lives. Necessary, Jiho repeated. Yeah, but the prince doesn't understand necessary. He understands honor, tradition, ceremony. He's never fought someone who was actually trying to kill him, never had to make the choice between dying pretty or living dirty. Dr. Isul finished packing her equipment. You could still back out. Claim diplomatic immunity or medical unfitness. I could file a report saying the long-term injuries make combat inadvisable. Jiho shook his head. He challenged me in front of the entire council. If I back out, humanity looks weak. Every species out there will think we're easy targets. But if you kill him, Dr. Isul started. I won't, Jiho said firmly. That's the hard part. I have to win without making it look easy, and I have to do it without killing him. If he dies, his empire goes to war. If I make him look foolish, same result. I need to beat him just enough to earn respect, but not so much that he loses face. Young Mi whistled low. That's like trying to thread a needle while riding a rocket. Yeah, Jiho agreed. But that's what they pay me for. Violence is easy. Controlled violence is an art. There was a knock at the door. Commander Hyun entered, his face serious. Thought you should know the betting pools have opened. Galactic odds are 50-1 against you. Only 50-1, Jiho said with a slight smile. I'm insulted, Hyun didn't smile back. The Velkorians are taking this seriously, Jiho. They've got their best combat analysts studying every human martial art they can find. They're preparing for you to use some kind of secret technique or advanced technology. Good, Jiho said. Let them prepare for something complicated. They won't see the simple stuff coming. He stood up, sliding the knife back into its sheath. The weapon looked primitive compared to the energy blades and plasma weapons carried by most species. But that was the point. Humans had learned to make do with what worked, not what looked impressive. You know what the real difference is? Jiho said to the room. Between human combat and what everyone else does? The others waited. They fight like it's a game with rules. We fight like the rules don't matter because the other guy sure isn't following them. They practice forms and techniques. We practice staying alive. They ask, what's the honorable move? We ask, what's the move that ends the fight? He walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the world that had birthed humanity, a world of endless conflicts where survival had always been the only rule that mattered. The prince thinks his sword is special because it's been passed down for generations, Jiho said quietly. My knife is special because it kept me alive through situations where I should have died. His blade is a symbol, mine is a tool. Youngmi stood, gathering her equipment. Get some rest, Jiho. You've got 12 hours until the fight. After they left, Jiho lay back on his bunk, the knife resting on his chest. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but memories came instead. The cold of Titan, the screams in the belt, the smell of blood and fear at Europa. 47 lives taken. Each one had a face, though some had been hidden behind helmets or masks. Each one had been trying to kill him or someone under his protection. Each one had learned too late that humans didn't fight fair. Tomorrow would be 48, or it would be the first time someone beat him. Either way, the galaxy was about to learn something about humanity. They were survivors, and survivors did whatever it took.